Hello, my good people. Welcome to my first, more negative top 10 list. Do you ever have that one film that you feel gets too much credit, that they aren't nearly as good as others say they are? Well, today, I'm counting down my personal overrated movies. Keep in mind that this is entirely my opinion. You can disagree all you want, but let's try to keep things civil in the comments, okay? Anyways, on to possibly my most controversial list. Let's-a go! This one is low on the list because I'm definitely not the only one who hates this movie. However, as of writing this, it's the highest grossing animated film of all time, and that fact just depresses me. And yes, it's animated. I don't care how hyper-realistic it looks. It's the live-action monstrosity that is the Lion King remake. The best way to describe this movie is if you took the classic 90s animated film and sucked out any life from it. Lion King 2019 is nearly identical to its actually good counterpart, making it entirely pointless to watch. There's only like a 5% story difference, and it's a lot more lifeless. For starters, the characters have no expression whatsoever, even though a lot of animals in real life do have some expression to some extent. Case in point, Simba has the same facial expression when his father dies as when he's falling for Nala. This is especially bad because Lion King in general is a pretty darn emotional movie. But here, everybody has a poker face throughout the entire thing. Even if you view it as its own thing, it's still not very good. For starters, we can't emotionally connect to the characters. Also, what kind of musical movie just has the characters walk forward for its musical numbers? Think about it. Along with the singing, there should be some good dance choreography. The movie, although well animated, is ugly as sin. The film has the color scheme of a sewer system, with all its browns. The original film was more colorful than a pride parade. And there's some really pointless stuff added to the narrative. Like, was the journey of the trough of hair really necessary? The whole movie tries hard to be realistic. Yeah, because that's what I want in a movie about singing animals. But all it does is take out the soul. Newsflash, things are animated for a reason. Stylization is key when making memorable animated characters, I say. Trying to make things look as lifelike as possible looks off-putting. Also, I don't care what the filmmakers say. This is definitely an animated movie. So the advertising saying it's the live-action remake is BS. Honestly, my biggest problem with it is that this is probably the biggest example of regurgitation of a film in recent years, as it's literally just the old film with an awful new paint job, and some good character moments removed. Say what you want about remakes, but they usually add something new to it. But this is just the same thing, but a lot worse. And the sad thing is there's a lot of people eating this up just because it's similar to something they grew up with.
Wow, dude, Pride rock!
I honestly feel bad for any kids growing up watching this movie and not the original. Fun fact, according to the director of this movie, the reason why Rafiki doesn't have his walking stick in this film is because it's unrealistic for baboons to have one. That is true, but you know what else baboons don't do in real life? Show up to lion baptisms and talk. The Paranormal Activity series, or as I like to call it, Screwing Around with Shit, the movie. The best way I can describe this film for those who haven't seen it is that an invisible demon starts moving crap around the house, and the married couple are freaked out, and that's it. What's wrong with the story? There is no story! How is this entertainment? If you enjoy these movies, that's fine, but I just don't get it. Why an entire franchise around something that feels like a YouTube video from 2006? I mean, if people find these movies to be good, then I could make a fortune off this. Ooh, scary. The worst part about the first one is just when things might start getting interesting, something finally happens, the film ends. Now, I'll admit I've only seen the first one, though from what I can gather, they haven't really improved much. I mean, the second one, the ghost starts playing around with a pool cleaner. That's good cinema. The series is mostly about nothing happening until the final act. Also, another big problem, the characters are as one-dimensional as paper. There is nothing interesting about anyone. We don't learn much about either of our two protagonists, and they come off as brick-earing assholes and are overall bland. If I cared about either of them, maybe I'd tolerate the movie a little bit more if I gave a rat's ass about anyone. But alas, these characters are as cheaply developed as the production of these movies. Overall, this movie is stupid, and it definitely isn't scary. Note, instead of getting actual footage from the movie, I'm going to use mostly unrelated footage, much like the movie itself does. Don't look up. More like, don't look up this movie. Oh! Originally, some other movie was gonna be in its place. I'll give you a hint. It was released somewhere between 1989 and 2016. But then this piece of crap came along and really rustled my jimmies. Now let me make one thing clear. I do agree with the film's message, as I do think we should take care of our planet. It's a metaphor for climate change, in case it wasn't obvious enough. But damn, this movie is a waste of my precious time. Literally most of the 2-hour runtime is drilling it into our heads that we're dumb and humans suck. Like, we get it. The whole movie feels more repetitive than Groundhog Day. Basically all that happens in this movie is that some rich assholes who are in more power than everybody else plan to mine an upcoming meteor for money, Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence freaking out all the time, and nobody taking them seriously. Basically the movie can be summed up by, oh no, the comet is gonna hit it! Who cares? We can make money off this thing. No, this is serious! Shut up, not listening! Let's dig for some gold! Uh-oh, that backfired. End of the world. Oh, and Leo cheats on his wife in a subplot that's basically pointless. All with a smug, we're smarter than everyone else attitude. Don't get me wrong, I know most movies have a moral to an extent, and that is a good thing, but the message is usually woven into the story and made more clear towards the end, not shoved down your throat the entire time. Also, the movie is long and boring. It made 2 hours feel like 5 hours, since none of these conversations are interesting or funny. I think I got one smirk here, but that's about it. Also, I pretty much knew what was going to happen throughout the entire movie. With multiple scenes of the rich guys planning their mining, and everyone trashing on Jennifer Lawrence, you just know things are going to end poorly, since the smart people are constantly being ignored by the greedy, unsympathetic people. So yeah, no surprises here. This movie's a real snooze fest. The writers think they're so smart, but its commentary is as deep as a puddle and has the subtlety of a screaming banshee. Yet the writers seem to think that they're breaking new grounds. Heck, I feel like they were using the main characters as inserts of themselves. Also, the editing of the film is horrendous. I mean, I've noticed several editing errors throughout my viewing. I know most movies have some mistakes, but these are some pretty big mistakes that I'm surprised none of the editing team noticed. Like, look at this scene.
I actually like the junky taste of store-bought better than homemade.
This is unedited footage. How did that make it past editing? Especially since this is clearly a big budget movie with an all-star cast. I'll admit Don't Look Up is still relatively new, so I'm not sure how much relevance it will maintain down the line, but it was nominated for 7 Oscars, none of which it won thankfully, being the Oscar bait movie that it is, and a lot of people are talking about it right now, so I'll put it on the list. But I hope that after a year or two, this movie falls back in popularity, and that no memes spawn from it. Note that I do 100% get the metaphor for the environment and Donald Trump, and I do agree with what it's saying, but my problems lie with its poorly written story that contain too many flaws for me to list right here. Maybe I'll do a full review of it one day. Space Jam. Now, I'm going to be honest and say this movie probably wouldn't be on the list if it weren't for the 2021 sequel, but now that I think about it, that cash cow wouldn't exist without people praising the original like it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I mean, out of all the 90s cult classic films to get a sequel, why did it have to be this one? I mean, yeah, it has some funny and cute moments, but it's definitely not a masterpiece. I'll say it's better than the new one, but it's still not all that great. Sure, the new one feels like an HBO Max commercial, but let's face it, it always was a commercial with some questionable story elements and characterization of the Looney Tunes. Like as said by Chuck Jones himself, if this was a short Bugs Bunny classic, he would be able to turn the table on these aliens in only 11 minutes without any help. Also, I really feel like he shouldn't be scared of this dog. Speaking of which, I want the Looney Tunes to be the center of this Looney Tunes film, but instead this movie mostly focuses on Michael Jordan and his friends, who, well, let's be honest, don't put on the best acting performance. Also, there's moments that are just kinda dumb, like the inflation, the spitting, and more. But perhaps the big thing that brings this movie down a few points for me is the fact that at the end of the day, it's a big commercial for Nikes and other products.
Come on, Michael, it's game time. Get your Hanes on, lace up your Nikes, grab your Wheaties and your Gatorade, we'll pick up a Big Mac on the way to the ballpark.
See? That was said without any sense of irony or awareness. Also, I feel like Bugs Bunny and Michael Jordan don't really have that much chemistry together. I mean, I never really bought that they were becoming friends or anything. I'll admit, if it weren't for the sequel, Space Jam probably wouldn't be on this list. But since it made me realize how much people really love this film, and this film is fine, but there's definitely better 90s kids movies out there that deserve more attention and are more worthy of a sequel, and most of them aren't nearly as dated. Now back in action, on the other hand, why isn't that movie as popular as this one? It's pretty much the better Looney Tunes movie in almost every way. The jokes feel more in line with the classic shorts, the story is more unique and interesting, and Bugs and Daffy are actually in the spotlight. Heck, Daffy gets a full character arc. But alas, it's not as popular as this one. 21 Jump Street. Now let me say that I should like this movie. I'm all for laughs and buddy cop films can be fun, but alas, I wasn't really that big a fan of this one. I guess I should mention while there's definitely some funny moments here and there. Also, the acting from our leads is pretty good, but for the most part, it's just juvenile and childish. I mean, it kind of feels like a bad Adult Swim show, with its forced crudeness and overall try-hard edge. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a prude, and I do like me some good raunchy comedies, but with this, it feels like it was forced. I mean, the peanut shooting scene alone made my eyes roll. I was 13 years old when this movie came out, and even back then I thought it was juvenile. Now you may ask, what do I think of the story and characters and such? Honestly, nothing really special. The story is mostly just an afterthought, as something to take backseat to the humor, which is fine I guess for the most part, but I wasn't super invested in the whole mystery of the drug deal since I kept getting taken out by pointless obnoxious scenes. And I found it kinda dumb how our two main characters pretty much become teenagers again, and start partying and doing stupid crap, even though they're supposed to be adults undercover. Now I'll admit I do like this idea on paper, adults having to go undercover at a high school and try to blend in. This could lead to some legit good comedy and maybe even some character development on how staying young at heart can be a good thing. But nope, instead they go back to being high schoolers again. I'm actually kind of surprised how well received this movie was, since usually these kind of movies aren't super well reviewed. It's basically the same kind of humor as these films I'm showing. But for some reason both audiences and critics loved it. Also, another thing that should be noted, this is based off an old TV series of the same name, and while I haven't watched any episodes, maybe I will someday, it does seem like an insult to fans, since the original series was actually a crime drama that took itself seriously and was good at handling harder subject matter from what I've heard. Now say what you want about the 2017 Baywatch film, but at least it made sense to have a movie like that since even fans of the original series will admit it's cheesy, so the filmmakers embraced the corny nature of it. But here, fans of the original show did take it seriously and unironically enjoyed it, so it just feels weird to do since this is an official adaptation that should pay respect to the source material and not a parody. Frozen. Although this isn't a bad film, it definitely has been overhyped. I already talked about it in my animated Oscar-winning reviews, so I'll try to keep it brief. It has great animation, but has a flawed story with some questionable story elements, at least to me. Also, the character designs look a little too similar to previous Disney movies. Why not switch it up a little? Honestly, if this list was made a few years back, it would probably be on the list higher. But it's definitely died down a bit. But it's still not great as other people say it is. But I'm not gonna dwell on it too long because this video is already getting kinda long anyways. War of the Worlds 2005. It's just a generic space invader movie where people run away from aliens for 90 minutes. Nothing new is added to the table, and the ending is a slap in the face to the author of the original book. I'll admit I haven't seen the 60s version, but I'll give it this. The alien spacecrafts and creatures themselves look far more original than the 2005 version, and it's possible that it has better writing. But I'm going off what I saw, and what I saw was no good. Also, if it weren't so well acclaimed, especially by audiences, I would assume that it had an uncertain demographic. On the one hand, it's far too grim and depressing to be enjoyed as a fun popcorn movie, especially with its 9/11 inspired imagery, but at the same time, its characters, themes, and story are far too surface level to be appreciated as a deeper film. I do like most of Spielberg's movies, some of which would be on my favorite movie lists. This one is unfortunately as painful as getting an anal probe to me. Wolf of Wall Street. All there is to this movie is sex, drugs, and no rock and roll. For 3 hours straight. I'll let this clip sum up the movie.
Oh, this girl! Vodka, drink, 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 drink it all, you pussy! More tuxedos, more cars, more pussy, more vodka, drink, drink, drink!
I mean, I have to stress I'm not a prude. Heck, I just used a clip from South Park, a show I've loved since I was 10 years old. But there has to be more to a movie than just unlikable assholes doing the deed and getting high. A lot of people will say there's more to this movie, like an underlying theme of the dangers of the party life and the true story of the downfall of a man who was once at the top of his game. However, while there is a story and an Aesop, it feels like the filmmakers wanted to hit the 3-hour mark, so they filled it with as much douchebaggery as possible. The film's idea of humor is, oh haha, isn't that horrible? Or, geez, these people are stupid and gross. It's really obnoxious to me. Also, Jordan is really loud and annoying. It's not even his drug problem or the fact that he's a villain protagonist that makes me hate him. Speaking of which, The Wolf of Wall Street is supposed to be a drama as well, but since I hate just about all these characters, except for Naomi, she's fine, I can't get emotionally invested in anything going on. Since they're all pricks who do nothing but have sex and do drugs, and a lot of them feel not that different from each other, making them all feel like clones of Jordan. Though trust me, he's not the worst character in the movie. That would go to John. There's no one to root or care about. But perhaps the worst thing is that the message is confused. It's supposed to be how drugs can ruin your life, but damn does it feel like the filmmakers are trying to portray the lifestyle in a fun and humorous way. Especially since it's only towards the end things start going sour. Also, the real Jordan makes his cameo. Yeah, because he deserves to be in a big budget movie. I'm clearly in the minority, but screw The Wolf of Wall Street. Titanic. Yet another Leonardo DiCaprio movie on this list. Trust me, I got nothing against him. God, is this movie overrated. It has a cliche story that's been done to death. It's been done before, been done after, and it's been done a lot better. It's the basic girl falls in love with a guy, but uh-oh, the parents aren't approving of this. Also, of course, the bad guy is a rich, greedy douche. The story doesn't do anything new with these tropes and just plays them 100% straight, to the point where it might be the most basic version of the story I've seen. I don't get how anybody who's seen more than 5 movies in their lifetime can consider this movie anything original. If you placed this love story on a fictional cruise ship, I can guarantee this movie would be a lot less popular. I know no idea is 100% original, but you should try to do something new with it and add your own twist. Also, not only is the story a cliche storm, but the characters are generic and bland. Jack is basically the perfect boyfriend, who is good at everything he does and never makes mistakes. He also centers his entire existence around a girl he only knew for 5 days. I have the same problem with his character that people do with Rey from the Star Wars sequels. He's a Gary Stew. The other characters are either one-note or poorly written, but I think I've made my point. I would probably be more forgiving towards this film, and maybe even put it lower on the list, if it weren't for this movie's truly awful dialogue.
I'm flying!
Who talks like that? I swear, at times this feels like a poorly translated movie script.
This is where we first met!
Yeah, now's not a good time for trivial stuff like that. And another thing you've probably noticed, they say each other's names a lot. Like, literally every other word is Jack or Rose. I calculated. They say each other's names a total of 162 times.
Jack.
Rose.
Jack.
Rose. Rose.
Hey, Jack. Rose, Jack.
Okay, seriously, I think this has a record for the most times a protagonist's name has been said. I dare you to find a movie where the central character's name is said more often than either Jack or Rose's name. As for the sinking of the ship and the historical stuff, it's pretty well done, but even that has some BS slipped into it. Like the fact that they misrepresented a real guy and made him look like a bad guy, look into it. And the forced emotional scene involving the montage of people awaiting their death with sad violin music playing. Emotional scenes should flow naturally. Here it feels like James Cameron is forcing us to cry. Might as well throw in a sad clown at this point. And last but not least, the annoying, ear-bleeding Celine Dion song. Overall, if you like this movie, that's fine, but it isn't my cup of iced tea. Before I get to my number 1 pick, here's a piece of cinema that might have been overrated at one point, but now it's kind of underrated maybe. Avatar. You've most likely at least heard of this film, and you know how it's Smurfahontas, how it's an unoriginal piece of blue cheese, and so forth. And while I do agree with some criticisms to some extents, I kind of feel like Avatar deserves credit for creating a unique world. Also, I can't confidently call this movie overrated anymore. In fact, it might be kind of underrated. Say what? Seriously, with how it's cool to hate and how everyone says it's not deserving of the praise it doesn't get, how can it be on this list? Maybe it was overrated at one point, but nowadays it doesn't count. There's also a sequel coming out this year, but only time will tell if it does well or not. Before I get a mob outside my house, let me say that you can disagree all you want. You're in the majority after all. Also, I'll say that these movies aren't really bad, and none of them would be on my worst movie list. However, not only is my number one an entire franchise, but it's probably one of the most popular out there. It's the entire Avengers film series. Yes, I know, my head is going to be placed on a pike, but let me say my POV. I feel like I haven't been majorly impressed with any of them, although I'll admit I do like some of the MCU, especially before they got oversaturated. I was never a fan of the Avengers movie. The first one, even back in 2012, kind of underwhelmed me at the time. It felt kind of generic and almost like a made-for-TV movie, especially since the main story isn't anything interesting or special. But I do know why it was so beloved at the time. It was because of all these characters coming together on the big screen for the first time, after each one starred in their own film. However, now that it's common for MCU characters to have casually crossed paths, I feel like its novelty has worn off. I even remember thinking Civil War was another Avengers film. The second one promised a big and threatening villain, but all we got was a baddie who barely left an impact, with a few more lame quips at inappropriate times and killing off a character who everyone has forgotten at this point. Seriously, Fox did a better job handling this character much better. Who makes another friggin' quip as his last word? Then came Infinity War. Everyone loved it, but at this point I was just so sick of the MCU, but sometime after its release I decided to watch it and it still didn't win me over. I'll say that Thanos was a good villain and there was some good moments, but still. Then came Endgame. Oh geez, let's just say I feel like this series hit a new low. The humor was really 5th grade level, with references to Fortnite and dabbing. Also, they soiled some good characters. Hulk/Bruce used to be a tragic scientist, but then they turned him into a jolly green joke, and they reduced a beloved hero into a running gag. They made Thor into a walking fat joke, and downplayed his depression. They killed off Black Widow and didn't even acknowledge that she died later on. Also, Thanos became a generic doomsday villain after the first movie, where he had some depth. In general, I feel like the MCU has jumped the shark, but this series in general, they've really overdone it with the quips and pop culture references at this point. Almost every action scene has a quick one-liner thrown in, or a reference to another piece of media, and it's always quickly said with a deadpan delivery. It was fine when Iron Man did it since it was part of his character since day one, but why does everybody else do it? I might sound like a humorless buzzkill, but trust me, I'm not. In fact, I love a good comedy. But I feel like the way they incorporate them often ruins the moment. Like, I don't feel like they're in serious danger when they're going to quip throughout the whole battle. Like, if they're not going to take this situation seriously, why should we? Also, they ruin a lot of epic moments with dumb jokes. Like, it was funny the first time with Hulk interrupting Loki, but now I just want the moment to play out like it should. Are they afraid that any attempt of real drama or triumph will be seen as cheesy? It's not even subversive anymore because of how common it is. Have humor in it, but make sure it doesn't interrupt the story flow and all that. I know I'm going to get some flack for this, but I'm sorry. The Avengers series, as well as the MCU, is pretty much worn out at this point. And it started pretty strong with Iron Man, but alas, I don't find myself enjoying these films anymore. And that's it. That was my top 10 most overrated movies list. Even if you disagree, I hope you enjoyed. Signing out.